Hey everybody, MS Farzan here, and welcome back to this video series on how to build a multiplayer card game using Phaser 3, Express, and Socket.io. In this video, we're finally going to talk about deploying our app, and there are many options for doing so. You could, for example, deploy this to Amazon or to Microsoft Azure or any number of hosting services. In my experience, the easiest one to deploy to is Heroku, and even then you might have some issues with deployment. And of course, like if you're going to be doing this in a production environment to sell games to people and stuff, you'll have to price out how that's going to work for you. So I'm not going to work through the exact deployment in terms of what it will look like to upload upload or deploy an app to Heroku. Although I do have another video on my channel about how to go about doing that with another type of app. But what I will do is point out some gotchas and some other things that we'll need to do in terms of configuring our app for deployment, as the way that it's running right now will not work in a production environment. We have to change a few things. So we're going to start out with our server file here and make some changes here to make it ready for deployment. The first thing we need to do is make sure that we have required cores here, and this is the allowing the server to enable cross-origin resource sharing, as we talked about in a previous video. I'm just going to check my package JSON, as I had an issue with when I did the deployment of this on another machine, I had some issues with that not being available to me. So what I want to make sure that I have here first is if I go into when I go into my package.json in the not in the client folder but in the server folder, I want to make sure that I have a few different dependencies here. And probably what's happened is that when we installed this, and when I say we, I'm talking about me, I didn't install everything and save everything that needed to be saved. So what I'm going to do is go to my root directory, and I'm going to say npm install -- save, and make sure that I save cores, express, nodemon or nodedaemon, shuffle array has already been saved, and socket.io. That just makes sure that when I install all of these things, I save them also to the package.json, so that now the dependencies are here, and when this thing is uploaded to wherever it's uploaded to, in this case will be Heroku, Heroku also knows to install those dependencies. And if I check my package.json in the client, I just really have Phaser in the Socket.io client, and that's fine. Okay. So now that that's done, I go back to my server, and I've required cores up here, and I want to also use path, which we'll use in a moment. So require path, and also serve static. Okay, what do we use those for? Well, first we're going to say server.use cores, and then server.use serve static, and then _ dir name or directory name plus client, /client /dist. What we're doing here is, the way that we're going to handle this app is we're going to build this client into a bunch of static files, because we don't, that's just the way our front end is going to work. And then we're going to use the server to serve those files as you normally would as static files, and we have to use our path so that right now the way that this works is that it's all working locally on our machine, but we need to be able to put together the directory name while the app is running in a remote location, and connect that with our /client/ distributable location, which we haven't created yet. One thing to note too is that when we're running this locally, it's all working really well on just like our local port 3000. What we need to change down here right at the bottom is, rather than it being some local host, we need to use the local host of whatever the process that's running, that is in this case will be running online on the cloud somewhere. So what we'll do at the bottom here, we'll say constant port is equal to process.environment.port, and 2 straight lines, and then 3000. And then when we do HTTP listen, we'll just do it to port. And that's that. Okay. So let's just check our, oh, we don't need this. Check our app, and it's connected, and everything should pretty much work the same way that it already has. It's not my turn, so yeah, everything works the same way that it already did, so that's working fine. But there's also one more, well, there's a few more gotchas that we need to attend to. The first one is that when I'm using Socket.io, I demonstrate both on, or I indicate both on the server side and also on the client side, that the origin is going to be the local host. The origin of the requests are going to come from localhost 8080, and then in my socket handler, I say the origin is actually going to be the origin of the server is going to be at 3000. Now that's obviously not going to be the case when I am I have deployed the app. It's going to be whatever the URL I've declared the app to be. So in this case, I've already deployed this app, or one very similar to it, to Heroku. And what I need to do is, well, what you would do is you'd go into your Heroku backend, or Amazon, or whatever you're doing, and you would build, you would create a URL for your app. So you'd basically create a new container, or however you do it, and get the URL and paste it in your socket handler here. So here I'm just phaser-tabletop-card-game 2021.herokuapp.com, nothing too special, and make sure that's the same here in your server, in your course config for Socket.io. Save that. This might actually still work the way that it is. Maybe not. Because the app is running. In any case, so what was I saying? Yeah, so let's just remember that, and just table that for a moment, because I want to do a few other things before we actually talk about really deploying the app. So just keep that in mind. That's a change that will need to be made. Yeah, we're working again. Okay, and so now that we've done that, and we'll just bookmark that for a moment to talk about in a second. And we've added our dependencies. We've changed our server file. What we're going to do here, we're going to build this game for production. And one of the reasons why we used or cloned the repository for the Phaser template earlier is not only because Webpack will watch our files for us and reload them as necessary, but also because now we can go into Tools, our command prompt, navigate into the client directory, and say npm run build. And what that will do for us is build the files for deployment, which is pretty cool. It's just going to create a minimalized bundle of files for us. That's basically like an index.html and a bunch of other things. If you're using and here's a trick too, another gotcha that I've encountered. If you're using a Visual Studio like I am here, you might not see it's supposed to build the files into a folder called dist, or distributable folder, within the client directory, and I don't see it here. There's a reason for this. I'm going to click up here to say show all files, and I see that it's here, but what may have happened is if you look in the git ignore file, it has told git to ignore the distributable folder, and we're just going to delete that from the git ignore here in the just making sure it's in the in the client folder. So I delete that from the git ignore and I save it, and now I can hide files, and now it appears again. And so this sits in the client folder, and that's the folder we're referencing in the server when we say we want it to serve this folder. And in the distributable folder, I see that it's created a bundle, min.js, and index.html, and this is basically, these are the files. This is my entire Phaser client in just 3 files. You could do this differently, like if you wanted to run. If you had a server sitting somewhere and then you wanted to run like this whole stack separately and then just make requests between them using socket.io, like you could do it that way. You know, it's up to you. It depends on your deployment considerations, but right now this is the easiest thing to do. And so why don't we try this? Why don't we try actually, so I'm going to stop running the client that's been running forever using Webpack. And I'm just going to run the, what are we running on? So let's restart the server. npm run start. And yeah, our well, let's run localhost 3000. And we say localhost 3000. That's actually still now we're running the game off the static files on the server, which is really cool. And you know, if I go to navigate to another localhost 3000 in the browser, I see the same thing here. So this is, and I see the game state is initializing. They're both connected. We're running into an issue here though. Which I wanted to bring to your attention, and that's that when I run this, I see that I'm getting a lot of errors in the console that say that there are issues with getting the assets, and that's because it's the game is trying to access the source assets magenta cardback, let's say, file, which doesn't exist there anymore. Remember, it was in the it worked when it was in the client directory, but now we're in the distributable directory. So you could work out the pathing of this to work, you know, to be a bit more sensible. But what I'm going to do instead is just literally copy the assets folder and paste it in the distributables folder. And actually, I need to go one level up. I need to create a folder here, which is the src folder, and then move that so it goes to distributable, source, and then assets, and then now everything should work. Like obviously if you have a ton of assets, this isn't the best way of going about it, so you have to just change the path, but in any case that should do the trick. Okay, and that's that. Okay. The one issue that we've come up with here is that simply that even though everything should be working properly, I don't have a player 1 here, and like neither of these is a player A, and I have a sense that that's just because I still have it still registers. The server still registers that one of my clients is connected to the server. So I'm just going to close everything up and close the server up. Start the server up. And change this to localhost 3000. And then we see here the this person is player 1, and then localhost 3000. This person is not player 1, and we can deal our cards, and there we go. Okay, we have the same functionality as we did before. The difference is we're not running a client using Webpack. We're just running static files via the server, which is pretty cool. And that means that when it works like this on my machine, there's a good chance that it's going to work in a deployment environment, but you never know. You might see some errors and have to look at the logs provided by your provider to see what the issue is. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go back into, so now that works, what I would do is I would go into my server, and I would change my, where's my URL? I would change my URL here in the server for Socket.io to whatever the URL for the game is. And then I would go into the socket handler as well and change that and save it. And then that would require me to rebuild the client and remove the assets directory like I did before, because when we build it, it's just going to delete this directory of dist and then do the whole thing again. So I'll have to redo that. And then I will use whatever deployment configuration I have to deploy my app. The last thing that we probably need to talk about is Socket.io rooms, which we haven't worked with here. But my sense of this is that if you created an app in this manner and then deployed it, because everybody's going to be going to this, let's say you have 100 players at the same time going to this this app location, everybody that logs in, I haven't tried this, of course, but my sense is that everybody that logs in to do this is going to just be getting all the messages that the server emits at one time, and that's going to get really messy really fast if like I just start seeing a bunch of cards appear that are not in my game. So what you'll have to do is work with what Socket.io calls rooms, in that it's able to designate a particular room for a conversation between any number of clients. So what you would do is you would, as in your server, you would connect, when a client connects, it would create a room for that client. And if you have a 2-player game, then you would only have 2 players or 2 clients per room, and you could pass that information. You could surface it to the front end so people could select a room, or they might be able to, I don't know, let other people know what rooms they're in, and then you would require the client and the server to communicate via those rooms rather than just globally, unless you wanted the server to say something to everyone all at the same time. So go to the Socket.io documentation reference and check that out. I also have another little app that I created, which is like a tabletop game designer / simulator that works with rooms in kind of a different fashion. I'll link that in the description to this video if you want to poke around there and see how I handled it. And that's about it for our tabletop card game using Phaser, Express, and Socket.io. I'd love to see what you've done with this and see how you've hacked into it and made your own games and and how you've deployed it, how you worked with all the different features that we have and made it your own. So please feel free to comment on this video or any of the videos, or join our Discord channel, or hit me up on Twitter. If you've liked this series, please do like the videos and subscribe to my channel for more. You can also follow me on Twitter, and I'd love for you to check out my books and games at nightpathpub.com, or share them with others, and let people know that what we're doing, and hopefully see you soon.